Thanks for tuning in to Coder Conversations. If you missed any previous episodes or you want to contact us, visit us at www.coderconvos.com. I'm your host, Kevin.
And I'm Brian Russick, professional drummer, drum teacher based out of the Suffolk County, Long Island, New York area. You can find me online on the web at www.brianrussick.com.
Awesome. And for today's guest, we have Joe Sepi Crane-Messina, Program Director of Open Source at IBM and also a musician. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
So you're both a technologist and a musician.
I am, which is an interesting story. Yeah.
So can you give us the background? How did you get into technology, and how does music correlate with everything?
Okay, I'll try to give you the not too long version, but I've been playing music since I was young, around 14, and playing in bands kind of right out of the gate. And some friends and I decided to move to Boise, Idaho to start a band together. 5 people that I had played with in different configurations, but the 5 of us had never played together before. But yet we decided to all move to Boise, for some really strange reason. And anyway, we got out there and it sort of, didn't work in the way we thought it would work. But I was out there and one of the guys was still out there with me and we started playing music out there. And anyway, I went to college for a little bit there at Boise State and really didn't have a plan or a focus. I just was like, okay, this is what people do. They go to college and I was living with hippies and kind of bouncing around and playing, touring and playing in bands and stuff. And so the schooling thing wasn't really working. So I thought to myself, I've always kind of lived my life sort of in the flow and take what comes to me. And I thought, music will find a way. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and some sort of career path will sort of emerge, and whether it's at a recording studio or a record label or, the band itself or whatever. I'm like, something will work out. I'm young. It's fine. Awesome. So I did play music for a while. And I ended up in Chicago and was playing in a couple bands there. And it was, early internet days, not early for the general public, I guess you'd say, like late 90s. And, places started asking for a website and an MP3 and an email address. And I'm like, oh, I guess I better figure this stuff out, and so I, started learning. I did view source on a web page and was like, oh, that's, back in the day, that wasn't crazy. I could see the text and some markup. And I was like, this isn't magic, So I built a website for my band and for some friends' bands and took some classes. And, next thing I know, I'm building websites for a variety of artists and like not getting really paid anything. Like I remember, getting paid with an air conditioner and I didn't even need an air conditioner, but he's like, this is all I got.
This is all I can pay with.
Yeah. And I started dating this woman who eventually became my wife and is now my ex-wife. But she said, what you have is a skill and people pay you, like you can get a job doing this. And I was like, oh, okay. And, within a year or so, I ended up working at Sears. And, I remembered Sears from when I was young and I'm like, oh, this must be a real career here. So, I was fortunate that I only did a little bit of schooling and I've still been able to really craft a career out of this that, ended up being, it was sort of a passion for me. I enjoyed doing it and started getting paid for it and just really feel pretty fortunate that it did land in my lap. And anyway, so kind of the moral of it is like music did provide a way. I needed, some tech for my band.
Right.
And that's kind of how it all fell into place for me. And yeah, like I was saying, like I feel fortunate that I grew up with the web, so like I started when the web was not crazy, and then now you do view source and everything's obfuscated and you can't make sense.
Yeah.
But I was fortunate to get started when I did.
So were you self-taught? Like, how did you get the skills to be able to get that first job?
Yeah, I was largely, so I took some classes, but the funny thing is, as I was taking the classes, I was becoming friends with the instructors. It was a small thing in Chicago, and the last portion of the course that I was taking, they didn't have someone to teach it, and they were like, "You're smart. You already know all this stuff. Will you teach it?" I was like, "No, I paid for this. I want you to teach it to me, and then we can talk after that."
That's
But
great.
yeah, so largely self-taught, and I've just been doing it for a long time, and I've had lots of good opportunities that have allowed me to grow, more and more. And then, these days, learning more and more about AI and all that kind of goes into that too, building applications and agents and whatnot. So yeah, it's been good. I've been at the right places at the right times to really learn more and continue my career.
So I'm assuming you got in tech maybe around the early 2000s or 2010s, around there.
Yeah, I really, with the band stuff was like 98, 99.
Mm.
But by the time I was actually like working, it was like 2001, 2002, that kind of time frame.
Okay. Was that around the tech bubble, like when tech was kind of bursting, or when was that exactly?
I think so. I don't remember, I didn't get too wrapped up in that, but yeah, I think sort of around that time, or was that even like a little bit before then? I can't recall.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think it's somewhere around that time period. But now compared to around when I came in around 2015 or 2016, it's a lot different. It's a lot harder
Oh
to
yeah,
get in now.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was doing stuff, in the days of like early Internet Explorer and Netscape. Um,
Netscape, that brings me back.
yeah, exactly. Before kind of Google was really a whole thing, and a lot of like Macromedia, Dreamweaver, and all this other kind of early web development stuff. And I remember, my main focus throughout my career has been JavaScript. And, I remember the early days of having to write different code for different browsers and test everything. And then the advent of like, frameworks like jQuery and the like really, were kind of revolutionary at the time. And so, yeah, I really got to kind of grow with that whole thing.
Yeah, I know. Like back then, JavaScript kind of had that stigma of "quote unquote" it's not a real language; it's a script language or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah, I still feel like that's still a little bit these days too, but the Java people have taken over and created TypeScript, and we have all that now too, and so it's interesting, it's fun.
Yeah, it's amazing how much JavaScript has progressed. Like before, just like an in-browser thing. Now you do robotics, AI, all kinds of stuff back end now.
Yep, yeah, it's been amazing. I remember when I was at Sears, in my early days, people were trying to do JavaScript on the server. This is before Node.js, and it was always interesting, but it was never viable.
Right.
And then Ryan created Node.js, and it kind of exploded from there.
Yeah, like to me, like once JavaScript got on the server side, then it started being taken a lot more seriously as a quote unquote real language.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't remember, it was a similar time, but like there were frameworks too that were coming up around then that really started to do the MVC pattern. And, you could really kind of architect more large scale applications using JavaScript. You weren't just kind of hacking stuff together, you really kind of had a whole architecture. And then, of course, when React came along, that was a whole nother evolution of web development. So.
Right, React and Angular. And
Yep.
now, did you get involved with just regular Java at any point?
I tried to avoid back-end languages. At Sears, there was a Java shop, and
Yeah.
I was just like, all right, you guys go compile for an hour and I'm going to write some front end code. The worst thing was when the Java people, we had some contractors or consultants overseas, and they wanted to write a section of the application using GWT, Google Web Toolkit, which was essentially like Java and then was compiled to JavaScript. And they assured me over and over that like if I needed to move something over 3 pixels, that I wasn't going to have to get into Java and like compile and everything. But sure enough, when it was, delivered, that was exactly what I had to do. And I had to go sit with a Java engineer and be like, okay, yeah, we have our product managers are pixel perfect and this isn't on. So we need to sit here and move it over 2 pixels. Okay, now compile. Nope, we got to go further. It was just like, it was really insane. But, we had a foosball table and ping pong. So when we had to compile, we'd just go take a break. That was fine.
Yeah, like for me, I did much like yourself, websites for my own bands and other bands when I was younger. Like you said, HTML, it was just regular HTML. You could view the source. You could kind of see, okay, that's an iframe. Okay, they're doing this.
Yeah.
And eventually I ended up going back to, I was doing music for a while, but music is very up and down, as you know. So I went back into tech and I learned Java Spring. And that was real. I found that to be really, really difficult. So then I learned when I got out of school, I went to like a coding boot camp. After I got out of there, my mentor was like, hey, you better learn JavaScript and React and Angular. I'm like, okay, great. So I just spent the last year and a half learning Java, and now there's no jobs for entry-level Java guys. They're all looking for senior. So, it's just interesting how life turns.
Yeah, it's really true. It's interesting for me because I'm a part of the OpenJS Foundation, and it's a home for a number of JavaScript projects like Node.js and Electron and Webpack and whatnot. And for years, JavaScript was the shiny object, and we could get big companies to sponsor the organization, the foundation, without too much trouble. And I feel like now that, we are where we are, it's not as shiny anymore. And AI is like the thing. And now everybody's dumping all their money into there. And, we're in the foundation trying to figure out how to make sure we can, keep the lights on and keep everything
up.
Yeah. We're like, hey, everybody uses JavaScript. You please help us keep the ecosystem, healthy and
keep it moving. Yeah.
It's interesting. You were talking about Java. I feel like we're kind of getting a little bit to that point these days. It seems
kind of like the enterprise front end language.
Yep.
So yeah, that foundation that's running like some of the core fundamental projects in the JS space. You say like Node.js, Electron, all of those, Webpack. Those are like used in tons of projects.
Yep.
What exactly do you do in that organization?
Yeah. Well, I'm a board member on the OpenJS Foundation board. And I am the chairperson of what we call the Cross Project Council, which is essentially, a technical advisory committee at the foundation, like kind of the top level advisory committee. I used to be a part of the Node.js Foundation. And for a while we had the Node.js Foundation and we had the JS Foundation, which of course you couldn't say the JavaScript Foundation because Oracle owns the trademark and they wouldn't let us. And now Ryan from, who created Node.js and is now running Dino, is like in a trademark lawsuit with Oracle trying to nullify their trademark, which is interesting. I think if you go to javascript.tm, I think is where you can keep up to date on that. But anyway, it's hard enough to get support for one foundation. To have 2 of them in sort of the JavaScript space was always a challenge and kind of confusing. And so at a certain point, we decided that it'd be in the best interest of the community to merge the two foundations. And so I was a part of the small group of people that worked to do that merger. They were both Linux foundations. I don't know if you are aware, but the Linux Foundation is in a lot of ways an umbrella foundation for all these sub foundations. And so both of those foundations, the JS Foundation and the Node.js Foundation, were Linux Foundation organizations, but they were different. Like one was a 501(c) and one was, a 501(6) or something. I can't remember exactly. But like there was all sorts of that sort of stuff to figure out. And just like, how do you merge these two different organizations into one?
Right.
What sort of representation do you have? We're big on like open governance and everything. And so we really wanted to make sure that the playing field was level and that we were really open to new people getting involved. And so it was a lot of work in the beginning, but we had some really amazing people involved. Some of the folks from the early Node.js days and a number of folks from my team and IBM. And so out of that work became the OpenJS Foundation, and sort of the people who were working on it were the original people of the we were originally called the Bootstrap Committee, but once we made the foundation and announced it, we created this cross-project council to kind of help govern, the ecosystem from the foundation standpoint.
Oh wow, that's all really interesting.
Yeah, it's we're doing really great stuff there, and like I said, we're really happy to have folks get involved from the community, whether they're directly involved in a project or not. And so the Cross Project Council, we actually meet every week, but we kind of alternate. The public meeting is every other week, and we stream them and record them and publish them live. And then the alternate weeks, we have these like kind of working sessions where we try to, just really as a group get our hands dirty and make progress on something that, we're working on. But additionally, we have these things that we call collaboration spaces. They're essentially like what people call SIGs, special interest groups. But we chose that term because the collaboration space, because we wanted to really have it be open to the community and not feel gatekeeping in any way. We want people to come and collaborate. And so we have, the ones that are really active are standards, so we have another number of folks from the W3C and TC39, which I'm a member of, and, a variety of standards organizations. And we, try to approach that work, be engaged in that work. We may be trying to represent the project that we are in, but we're also really trying to think about the community and how this impacts the larger ecosystem. Security is another collaboration space that's been really active the last couple of years. So we're really trying to make progress there and working a lot with the open source security foundation, OSSF, you know what I mean. And what else? The data visualization collaboration space is really active, and we got a couple of great projects in there for data visualization work and like mapping and things like that.
Now we're talking Power BI, Tableau type stuff.
I'm not sure what that is, actually.
Oh, they're used in, I think, data analyst and business analyst role. Kevin, maybe you know a little more about it than I do.
I think that's more like, that's not really web-based stuff. That's more in the data analyst space.
Got it.
Oh, analytics. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like there's like VizGL and GeoDAS, I think one that's applied. Yeah, so we have a number of visualization libraries and frameworks that are really active and a great part of the foundation too. And I feel like there was a couple more that I'm forgetting, but so standard, security, data viz. What's the fourth one? I can't remember. But anyway, it's we're really trying to do good work there. I think one of the one of the recent successes is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Express Node.js framework, which is,
Yeah.
really widely used. Version 5 had been, promised for years, and really the project itself was kind of there were governance issues, I guess I'll say. And when I say governance and I talk about open governance, I'm talking about the like lead maintainers and organizers of a project. There being more than one, for example, but also like there can only be a certain percentage from one company, and that they have good practices in terms of how they move the project forward, and transparency and all these kinds of things. And so we are real big proponents of open governance in the projects in the foundation. And things weren't great over in Express, and they hadn't been for a while. And so we a couple of the maintainers who were trying to make progress there were already in the foundation and the cross project council, and we got a group together to really try to map out a path forward. And we brought along the lead maintainer, who there were challenges in the past, I guess you'd say, but everybody really came together and saw what was best for the project, and we were able to really kind of move things forward. And now there's a healthy contributions. There's a good pace of releases happening now. Version 5 finally came out. We're able to keep up with security issues, bug fixes, performance, all this sort of stuff. And so, I helped in some of the early parts in terms of planning and how to make it work. But some of the folks from the community really, took it forward, and it's a great success story that we're really happy about. And there's another project in the foundation that's in perhaps a similar state that we're working on right now, and already getting like some good traction and seeing some progress. So we're really hopeful about that. So yeah, it's a lot of times people don't understand what the point of a foundation is, and we really, number one, try to provide services for the projects, whether it's infrastructure or security related things. But we also are really invested in the community and the projects themselves, and are really working hard to keep things healthy and moving forward.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more coherence in the JavaScript world compared to the past, because like personally, I had JavaScript fatigue like a while back, because there's like 10 solutions for the same problem. You have Webpack, Rollup, or Angular, not Bootstrap, Angular, React, Vue, just slightly different solutions for the same problem. And it's hard to pick amongst that, but it seems like it's settling down.
Yeah, it's still kind of like that, but I think that it's maybe a little bit easier to kind of figure out what makes sense for you these days, and certain things work better with other things, and if you kind of dig in, it sort of starts to make sense. And you're like, okay, I'm going to use this stack, for lack of a better term,
Right.
But yeah, and and there have always been ups and downs, but like we as a community have been pretty stable and pretty healthy the last 5-6 years. It's been really good.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just sounds like a massive collaboration effort.
It really is. But on the day to day, there's 10, 15 people in the meeting, so it's it varies, different people in different meetings and everything, but it's a large undertaking, and we're always happy to have more folks join in. So I'll do my usual plug here that if folks want to get involved in the OpenJS Foundation, if you go to OpenJSF, OpenJS Foundation, OpenJSF.org, you can read all sorts of stuff about us and our member companies and the projects and whatnot. But also, if you go to openjsf.org/collaborate, there's links to our Slack, to our GitHub, to our public calendar. Pretty much all of our meetings we do either stream it live or publish the recordings later. I've been a little bit bad about this lately, but we try to publish our meeting minutes to the GitHub repo. we are really try to be, we try to do as much as our work as possible in the public space. Number one, so that it's transparent, but number two, so that it's accessible and people can see ways to get involved, so like I said, we publish our meeting minutes, we stream our things, our meetings. We've got our calendars are public. There are, only a couple of rare instances where the meetings are not public. Even our board meetings, the first half we do private, and then we do a public session where we're able to share all the public stuff. And we try to defer things to GitHub whenever we can. And I mean, we try to use GitHub issues. If we have a conversation in Slack or in a meeting, we try to document what was talked about and any decisions that were made in the issues. So we really try to do everything as much as we can in the public for those reasons.
So heavy documentation.
Yeah, as much as we can, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we try, and it's funny being in a foundation and some of the things that kind of goes on. You start a board meeting and it's like, we need to approve the meeting minutes from last week. Can I get someone to approve? I motion to approve. Can I get a second to approve? Some of that sort of stuff. But it's funny, but yeah, we do fun stuff and we make a lot of progress, and it's been really good.
Awesome.
So I think HTML5 and ES6, that was like a huge milestone in JavaScript, kind of really solidified it as a language that people would actually want to use, and brought a lot of technologies that were formerly plugins native into the browser.
Those were big times back then. There were lots of things that, like we were talking about jQuery earlier, that kind of leveled the playing field in the browsers and brought, much needed features to the language. And then slowly, with like ES6, we started to take some of those obvious things that should be in the language and started bringing them, to the TC39 and standardizing them.
So I think right now, typically the web is like flat, kind of like flat web pages, 2D web pages, but there's also like 3JS, Babylon JS, WebAssembly. Do you foresee any time in the near future where pages start becoming a little more dynamic, like more 3D integrated into the pages?
It's a really good question, and I don't know if I have an answer for you. I mean, I have to imagine that things will continue to move in that sort of direction. They've been a little slower than I think I might have imagined. But with Oculus and Vision Pro and these Meta sunglasses or whatever, this sort of augmented reality stuff I think is really interesting. And I've done some Oculus stuff and it's really fun. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity in those types of interfaces. Once the hardware really can get us there, and become more, easily available to the general public, not as expensive as part of that comment.
Right.
I think that those things will, start to come around more for sure. I think about even really super basic and simple, but the heads up displays that they're doing now in cars with, navigation and whatever, that's super cool. And I think the more that we start figuring out ways that sort of interface makes sense, for things that we're doing, whether it's on the web or what have you, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how the browsers now it's essentially like an operating system, and it's multi-platform. Like you don't need something completely different to run the application on Linux versus Windows versus Unix. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's stuff happening in the AI space now where you try to run stuff locally, and what ends up happening is you kick open a web browser window, and then you start, connecting to services and stuff, but you're doing AI work, but you're in a browser, you know what I mean? And then you even look at like Electron and what that really did. We have all these applications that are essentially web browsers, Slack. I'm pretty sure Slack is still Electron based, but VS Code was also originally Electron based. I'm not sure what their status is now, but it's really interesting that you can just do so much with essentially a web interface.
Yes, it's amazing how like something that was essentially considered like a script kiddie language or whatever, now it powers so much software, modern software.
Yeah, and really, when you think about it, it's not that much different from the late '90s. It's just the JavaScript engine and a layout engine, and it's gotten a little bit more advanced and a little bit better in a variety of ways, performant, what have you. But it's still really kind of, a car is a car. So
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like you picked the right horse out of the gate? Because of what JavaScript has become today, are you glad that you specifically picked that versus say like C++ or another language?
yeah, absolutely. But I say that knowing that it feels right for me, but it might not be right for everyone, so everybody's got their own path. But I do feel very fortunate that I stumbled into all of this and I enjoy it and I have a great job doing it. But also, like you said, I mean, I joke that like my lawnmower runs on JavaScript, but these days they do have these robot lawnmowers, and I bet there is JavaScript on there, you know. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and so like, yeah, I mean, whether it's your thermostat or something, or what, there's just like JavaScript is everywhere. And so I do feel fortunate that the choice that I did make is one that is, they call it the lingua franca. It's the language that everybody really kind of needs to know a little bit of,
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's fun. And it's actually a really great, vibrant community too. I really love the JavaScript community. It's a lot of creative people. It's just a diverse group of people too, and a passionate group of people too. So I really like that aspect of it too.
So like what are some of the big kind of like the trends upcoming that the community or the language is moving to? Like what can we expect?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously AI is everywhere. And so actually I was just talking to Robin again, the executive director of the foundation, about creating a AI collaboration space. And so we're trying to figure out what that would look like and what areas of AI we think we would talk about. And I mean, I think that's an obvious one. But I'm honestly not sure what beyond that. I don't feel like I used to, but I don't feel like these days I have my pulse on the bleeding edge, my finger on that pulse. But so I leave it to the kind of the younger engineers of the day to tell me what's coming
For
next.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, definitely AI is a big thing. IBM does a lot of open source work, and we open sourced. We donated a project to the Linux Foundation AI and Data organization called BAI, BEE, because IBM does a lot of with the B. So BAI we donated, and the original implementation was in TypeScript. And it was meant for web engineers who wanted to build agents and whatnot. Of course, everyone was like, "Why isn't this in Python? And why can't I use?" And so they've worked a lot on getting feature parity with the Python implementation. So that's there now, but the original implementation was with TypeScript. So we'll see. I think everybody's really focused on Python right now. But I do wonder, I'm very curious how the JavaScript community and AI will work and what's going to kind of come out of that, so we'll see.
like from the extent that you've dealt with AI, how much of it is like hype versus like the reality? Because I've heard somebody say like in the future, there'll be one person running a multi-million-dollar company with nothing but AI agents. Like, do you believe like we're actually getting to that point, or is it kind of overblown?
I think it's both. I think that there's a lot of hype. And I think even the people who are, there are some people who are hyping up in a way that it's like it's going to solve all the problems and it's going to do everything. I think that's a lot of hype. But then the other folks too that are like it's going to end humanity. I think that is also hype. And people have their reasons for why they do these kinds of things. I'll answer that question in a second, but I think that AI is super useful. And I think that it can be really, really helpful. And I think that it can probably do things that, may eliminate some jobs, but it also, I think the majority of it is going to be, it's going to make people's jobs easier.
Right.
And make them more efficient and, those kinds of things. Sure, robots can do a lot of assembly line work and stuff, but you still need engineers to manage those things and whatnot too. So, I don't know if this is a great analogy, but I kind of think about like in the music space, when cassettes came out, they thought it was going to end records. And when CDs came out, they thought that was going to end everything. And, vinyl still sells like crazy these days,
Yeah.
so it's still around. So I think that there's a little of everything there. I think that there's lots of potential for misuse. There's really, I think it's dangerous in ways where people really like kind of treat it like a human or something, and they take what it spits out as like the gospel. And it's, I was just reading something in the New York Times, and this article is a little bit crazy, but they were talking about a guy who was already a bit unstable, but he started to talk to ChatGPT and it told it to stop taking its medication and stop spending time with its family. And I stopped reading.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have a friend, I hope he doesn't watch this, but he's convinced that he's solving quantum challenges that quantum researchers haven't been able to figure out. Was convinced that he and ChatGPT like solved some of these things. And he was like, oh, it's this really amazingly simple algorithm that we came up with that solves quantum incoherence. And then I finally got him to tell me it, and it was just like gibberish. And then he showed me some of the images, and I'm like, this makes no sense. Like what?
Yeah.
And so, I worry about people like that. So yeah, I think there's potential for harm in a variety of ways, small and large. But it's happening whether we like it or not.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Somebody asked, Shane asked if we have our own AI. We IBM open sourced a foundation model family called Granite, Granite, Granite. It's large language models. We had code models, but I think the code aspects are now into the Granite foundation models. We have time series models. We have like Guardian models for guarding input and output with the foundation models. We have a whole platform, which of course is called Watson X, because we've been naming things Watson for a very long time. But it's a really robust platform. IBM does two things really well. We do open source and like standards and that kind of stuff really well. And so I think the work that we're doing on IBM Granite in the open with attributable data, good data that we can share and whatnot, and like really trying to take best practices and not do like just train it on the internet, because garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
And then we also are good at like alignment and fine tuning. So what I was saying is we're good at open source and we're good at enterprise. And so like our thing is we built this great model, right? And you can take it into your enterprise and use all of your proprietary data, all of your internal documents, all of these things that are in your silo, and you can train your Granite, our model, with all of that information, or you can use RAG or whatever approach you take. But you can basically combine all of your proprietary data with an open source model and then kind of be off to the races and not have to worry about, Llama changes their license and now it's kind of, a little questionable whether you should use it. Or some of these other services where you might be, and of course a lot of enterprises can't do this, but you send your information to their model and now they have all this proprietary stuff that you want to keep in house, on-prem. So that's where IBM shines, is kind of the enterprise solution stuff. And so you may see some commercials that we put on the TV or the internet or whatever here and there, but primarily we're talking to, people who have our mainframes and people who are, multi-billion-dollar companies here.
Right.
So yeah, like what problems are you realistically seeing like businesses use AIs to solve? I know like kind of like customer service chatbots is one, but like what are some of the other predominant uses of AI that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean the chatbot stuff is an obvious one, and it's certainly generally speaking gotten better over the years. But something that I've been working on lately is the time series foundation models, and that one, it was kind of surprising to the team how we would look at the model downloads from Hugging Face. And our foundation model, our large language model would do well, but we would look at the time series models and they were doing better. And we were pushing the large language model and we weren't even talking about the time series models. And we were like, holy cow, what's going on here? And really what it is that, not only enterprises, but lots of organizations have time series data that they want to use to either forecast or do like anomaly detection. So you can run this data through time series models and have it do anomaly detection is a really good one. Forecasting, retail sales or energy demand, or there are a variety of things that you can imagine with this kind of time series data. And a lot of times what's interesting that IBM has been able to figure out is essentially multivariate time series data. So you can have multi channels coming in, and you can use that to really improve your forecasting or what have you. And then there are even ways to like kind of have control channels where you can model, like say for retail forecasting, you can model different discounts or what have you, and it does a really good job at kind of forecasting that sort of stuff.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. I'll just say really quickly, because I've been talking about time series a lot lately for work, and I did a workshop in Manhattan on Wednesday. If you're interested in this stuff, particularly the time series stuff, I created a short link. It's ibm.biz/granite-ts, and that's for time series, ts-workshop. And in the workshop, we have 6 notebooks. And I don't know if you guys have played with notebooks at all, these Jupyter notebooks, but they're really amazing. Have either of you played with them yet?
I've kind of like looked, dabbled a little bit, but I haven't really dove too deeply into it.
Yeah, what I love about them, especially for, part of my job is running workshops and giving talks and doing podcasts and whatever, and essentially like, sharing knowledge. And one of the things I love about these Jupyter notebooks is it's essentially, you have these text blocks where you can explain what's happening, and then you have a code block that you can run, and it has the output right there and everything. And so these Jupyter notebooks walk you through, setting up your data, getting your model set up and the different variables and control channels, particularly for time series work. And you can actually see it do the work. You know, you go through it. I mean, you can push a button and it'll run them all, but you can go one at a time and push the buttons and see it do everything. And then at the end, it even charts out, you know, the actual data and the forecast, and you can see how close it is. And then you can go in and change some of the parameters and see if you can tune it a little bit better. So anyway, in this workshop, this Granite time series workshop, there are 6, I think, notebooks in there, and there's a couple on energy demand. There's one on this retail forecasting. So there are a few things there that really kind of walk you through what's happening, how you set it up, why you do a couple of the things that you need to do, especially with time series. You really need to kind of prepare your data and make sure it's consumable by the model, and then see it, do its work. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's great. It's really great. And it's powerful in that it's powerful in a number of ways. And I think one of them is it's powerful that it's so accessible for people to just see it in action.
Yeah.
So I know, like, AI, it is incredibly powerful, but on the other hand, it has, like, you kind of mentioned it in the story earlier. It can be deceptive, or it can come to incorrect conclusions, hallucinate, etc. So, do you feel like we should be utilizing this to solve critical infrastructure problems? Because if it's manipulative or deceptive or incorrect on certain aspects, like, can we trust the output?
Was it Reagan that said, trust but verify, I think it's really helpful, but I think you should pretty much always, at least at this stage of the game, and depending on what you're doing, have a human, in the loop there. Yeah, they hallucinate. They come up with all sorts of stuff. What was it at the workshop? One of the other projects that we donated to the foundation was a project called Docling, DOCLING. And it's funny, it's just basically a tool to convert documents into other documents, but particularly for AI. And so, like, you can imagine, if you want to use a PDF in your fine tuning or your RAG or whatever, and you want the model to be able to make use of it, you might need to do some conversion or something. And this project is for such a utility kind of tool. We have all been really surprised at how popular it is, because I think so many people, are like, how do I get my documents into my model here? How can I start working with them? So anyway, it's a great project, and he was one of my colleagues was running a workshop on it. And if you have 2 columns in a PDF, Docling is really good at handling that now, but there are lots of other sort of document ingestion tools that had trouble with 2 columns. And he showed an example where I can't remember what it was called. It was like vegetative transition state or something, but it was in some scientific paper. And it just basically took 1 word from one column and 2 words from the other column and put it together. And now there are like 40 papers out there that talk about this, but it's not real. It's gibberish. And, so anyway, I can't remember why I got onto this. I guess it's hallucination and whatnot.
Yeah.
My point is, you kind of still need to be in there and making sure things aren't going haywire or making things up or, what have you.
So kind of like you're saying, there needs to be a human present.
Absolutely.
Somewhere in the chain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, again, back to what we were talking about earlier, like, I think that's where it can be really beneficial. You may use it to write an email, but you take what it gives you and then you make it your own. You're like, okay, this got me 75% of the way there, but let me kind of, tweak it a little bit. I think that that's really a good analogy for broad uses of AI. Like it'll get you most of the way there, but you still really need to look at it closely, and you still probably need to get it over the finish line. And at least in its current state, that is definitely where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a powerful scaffolding tool. My concern is like as time passes, we increasingly start trusting it more and more. We verify less and less because we automatically assume it's smart, it's right, and we just go with whatever.
Yeah, I hope that there will be natural, mechanisms that kind of keep that at bay. Like, for example, if you vibe code your website and you put it out there and it's doing like some stuff that's insecure, secure payment transactions or whatever, and you didn't do the due diligence to make sure that it's secure, and all of a sudden now, somebody hacked you or whatever. Like I'm hoping that there are these sort of natural consequences that keep us from really going down that path and keep us grounded in needing to be engaged in what it's outputting.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, like with vibe coding, I know you're pretty much relying on the AI to create the program for you, and it allows non-technical people to create apps. But the danger is they don't necessarily understand like what the code is doing. They kind of understand what the results they see, but they don't understand all the intricacies of actual code, and you can get unintended results from that.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a project. I have this whole like platform in my head that is to benefit like independent musicians, and it's like multifaceted. It's to like help them touring. It's for a variety of things. And I've had a couple of false starts in trying to build it. And it still sits with me. I still renew the domain name every year. I think I actually have 2 or 3 of them now that kind of cover that space. But I'm excited right now. I have a friend who does a lot of like prototyping with AI. He'll just tell it what he wants, and then he'll fine tune it by kind of, okay,
Right.
yeah, use this framework, do that, but do this.
Right.
And so I want to get with him and maybe kind of prototype out some of this stuff. However, I am fully aware that I'm going to need to go in there and make sure that like there's proper authentication, there's all the sort of security measures are in place, and so you really need to kind of vet the code and just stay fully engaged in what it's outputting. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, for my final question is like me being in the tech industry for a while, I know you can quickly become obsolete if you're not constantly learning new stuff. So, like in your estimation, what are some of the technologies people should stay up on just to be prepared for the future and not become obsolete anytime soon?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I hate to, I feel like AI sucks the air out of every conversation. And so I hate to go there, but if I was recommending someone, I would definitely say, consider that space. And I think the thing is too, there's a lot to it that you can learn. Not just how to run models and how to fine tune models and inferencing and all that stuff, but like, there are all these agentic platforms now and different like agent to agent protocols, and like there's a lot to it that I think people could start to get involved in, and I think it would be beneficial for their career path going forward. Yeah. How will AI affect the cloud? I'm not sure how to answer that. I think that they can be really kind of mutually beneficial. And we're seeing, different cloud, different aspects of the cloud architecture being used in the AI space. And then also things that we've learned from the whole, cloud native endeavor is applying to the work's happening in the AI space. Whether it's the whole Kubernetes model, and being able to containerize and then being able to replicate and really kind of scale. We're starting to see more of that with like VLLM and kind of distributed aspects of that sort of platform. So yeah, I think that they will probably be mutually beneficial and really kind of work together. And I think there's a lot that the folks who are working on AI and the delivery of AI and the hosting of AI and all of that are really taking a lot of the lessons from the cloud native journey.
Yeah, before we close this out, Brian, did you have any closing questions?
I guess we really didn't get a chance to dive into your musical background. I was just curious what got you into music, or how did you get into music, and how does it affect you today?
Yeah, I started playing when I was young, and I just really embraced it, and I would spend hours in my room, playing my guitar and learning scales and learning songs. And I loved it, and I still love it. And I really do think that music and math and engineering are all kind of related in some way, and there's like a lot of overlap. And so, yeah, I feel really fortunate that I think we were talking maybe before we started the stream, but like music brought me to technology, and I take a lot of that technology back to music, and it's I feel really fortunate in a variety of ways on both sides of those, music and technology. And
That's
I will
awesome.
say, I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but my band is called Discount Fireworks, and so I got to do a plug for that.
Yeah,
Very
where can we
cool.
find you at?
Everywhere, of course, Bandcamp, but Spotify, iTunes, or whatever it's called, Apple Music, all those places. Discount Fireworks. We have one record out, and we just put a single out a couple of months ago, and we recorded over the holiday break, the before New Year's. And I'm working on those songs, and so I expect that we'll release another single or two, and then hopefully the full album in a couple of months once I get things wrapped up. Everybody's waiting on me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts?
No, I don't have anything, profound here. I guess just, don't quit whatever you're doing. Keep doing it.
Keep going.
Yeah, exactly. My friends and our music community stuff. That's what we always say. Don't quit. Keep going.
Well, awesome, man. That was an awesome episode, and we love to have you back and dive in maybe into like the music.
Yeah, I'd love that. I really appreciate y'all inviting me. It's been great talking, and I look forward to next time.
Yeah, no, we definitely went pretty deep with the tech stuff, but that's cool too.
Yeah, joesepi.com is my kind of main website. You can find all my music stuff there, but also some of the technology stuff up there. And feel free to reach out on wherever. I don't use Twitter, so you can't reach out there, but LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, you can find me Joe Sepi anywhere, JoeSepi.
Awesome.
So yeah, I guess Shane had that last question. If you wanted to take that one.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And interestingly, at work at IBM, the team that I work on is an open source focused team. We're kind of like a SWAT team in the open source space for our company. And we were just talking yesterday that there's a bunch of open source projects in the data space that we are going to be looking at and getting more involved in. And so I think, data and AI are kind of hand in hand. So definitely, I think investing in that space is smart.
Awesome. And yeah, we'd like to thank everybody